Welcome back to the technology track. Today's module is going to focus on building a tooth. We're going to build tooth number 14 today. Building a tooth and biogeneric copy. So real quickly, if you remember, there are three ways to build teeth. Biogeneric individual, that means we're going to use other teeth in our patient's mouth, usually distal when it's a posterior tooth, or mesial to it if it's an anterior tooth, in order to recreate a tooth that we're working on that day. Biogeneric copy is when we are going to actually use the pre-treatment tooth, and we're going to literally copy, we're going to duplicate that tooth when we build our new tooth. And the third is biogeneric reference, and that's an occasion if we were working on tooth number 14 where if we really loved the way tooth number 3 looked, we could make the mirror image of it and build it. But today we're going to focus on biogeneric copy, and you may recall we use that about 30% of the time, and there are a couple big reasons we like to use it. First reason to copy is if we are working on a tooth that we love the way it looks already and we've got good occlusion. So a great example of that is we're sectioning off an old crown that has recurrent decay. But the contours are great, the occlusion's great, we're happy with it, we're just going to copy it. Second reason we may want to use biogeneric copy is if we are working on a tooth that is an abutment for removable partial denture. We can replicate guide planes, rest preparations, contours for reciprocation and retentive arms. So that's number 2. And number 3 is if I'm working on multiple teeth, I may have a diagnostic wax-up from my lab, whether it's in the posterior segment or the anterior segment. I can save myself a lot of time by taking my pre-treatment pictures off a model when my patient isn't even there, and then all I have to do is shape teeth and take new pictures of my preparations when my patient is there. So biogeneric copy is a really fast, very effective tool and mode to build teeth. So tooth number 14 today, it's highlighted so you can see. If I hover over, it's going to show you that we've selected biogeneric copy crown and it's tooth number 14. Sarek is great about double and triple checking everything. We know we're building a single restoration. And I'm going to come down to the bottom of the screen. Because I've told Sarek everything I want, I'm going to hit these double arrows and click next. Now, in the essence of time, I have already loaded pictures into Sarek. We're going to spend a module or 2 or 3 on how to take great pictures, and when we do the hands-on segment, we'll spend a lot of time doing that. But for the sake of time, I've loaded pictures in here. The important thing to know when you're in any mode is what pictures do you need? So think about it for a second. What are we doing with biogeneric copy? We're taking the pre-treatment tooth and we are duplicating it. So if that's the data that Sarek needs and we're working on tooth number 14, we know we need pictures of the upper jaw where we're working. Makes sense. We need a master model. We need the pre-treatment pictures, so we need to take images of 14 before we prepare it, and we need the post-preparation pictures so we have what we want to copy and what we'd like to copy it on. What we don't need in biogeneric copy is opposing jaw pictures, and we don't need a bite registration because all the information we need is captured from the pre-treatment images. We know the occlusion, we know the contours, so we don't need an opposing jaw and we don't need a bite registration. Make sense? Okay, so in this instance, as I say, I've taken the pictures, so we're going to go to next. Takes a few seconds, not very many as you can see. And what we have is our model. So when we were in administration and telling it what to do, administration was highlighted in this gold color. When we needed to take pictures, acquisition was highlighted. And when we became the model phase, models highlighted. Now, sometimes your model will jump to a different area of the screen. CEREC is still a computer, so sometimes things happen. But if you feel the need to move the model, and we'll do it just so you know how, you can right-click on your mouse and roll it to wherever you'd like it into the screen. So I'm just going to center it, not because I need to, simply because it's visually easy for me to work on this tooth now. Once it's where you would like it, you simply let go of the mouse and it plants itself where you want. So what you'll see here highlighted is Edit Model. This is an advanced feature that if you wanted to clean things up, so I'll give you an example here. What makes this so accurate, so cool, is that you can rotate it around three-dimensionally. But if you look way back here, we've got some spikes. It's noise, essentially. And let's see here. But that's not going to have any effect on our restoration. But you could eliminate all of this. We'll get into Edit Model later on so it all makes sense to you, but let's stick with what we're going to work on today. Because we're not going to need to edit the model, I'm going to come to our double arrows again and click Next. So, what is CEREC asking us for? It's asking us to draw our margin. We need to let CEREC know where our crown is going to meet our tooth. We need to identify our finish line, essentially. So what you'll come to know with CEREC is whenever you initiate a movement, it's a double click of the mouse. Whenever you finish a movement, it's a double click of the mouse. And if you ever want to take a line and you want to position it somewhere, you can hold it in place by single clicking. That'll make more sense as we do this, and a lot more sense when we do hands-on. But I'm going to pick a spot on our finish line. It makes no difference where. And I'm going to take my hash marks and kind of rest it on my finish line. And like I said, I'm going to double click to start. What you'll see is a little red dot right there. And now I've got this green line that I'm dragging, and that is me identifying where my finish line is. Now you can see it's finding my finish line really easily, right? Pretty simple. I single click if I want to turn it blue. Now that means I can't go backwards, but that means my finish line isn't going to bounce all over the place. So that's what I meant about single clicking to tie something down. If I keep going, I can single click. If I keep going, probably can come all the way to the end here and double click because I'm finished, and that will seal where my margin meets my tooth. Now, it looks great from this angle. The question is, three-dimensionally, how does it look? So I'm going to grab my model, I'm going to left click, and I'm going to rotate it. And I'm going to look around and see, does that look like the finish line that I've created? Not so bad. Interesting point to note. When you give CEREC a nice preparation, when you give it a finish line that's easily identified, and then you take nice pictures of it, drawing your margin is a piece of cake. Now, if you can't see your finish line on the screen, either because it's not distinct or because you took bad pictures and it's really fuzzy looking, then CEREC can't see it either, and finding your margin becomes a bit of a nightmare. So the goal is nice prep, nice picture. Long story short, we've got our margin. What's next? Define our access. Basically, make sure you have a path of insertion. So two things you need to know. Number one, you need to line it up so you have a path of insertion. You can see down and see your finish line everywhere. That looks pretty good. The other thing is that CEREC is a German company. Sirona is a German company. And Sirona, being German, likes linear. So there's a significant advantage to, in addition to making sure you've got a nice path of insertion or path of draw, to make sure that your central fissure is parallel with the top of the screen. Now, if you've taken nice pictures, it's going to land there anyway. But as a new user, when we deal with modules on taking images, and when you actually get hands-on, you'll see that that can be a little A little more easily said than done. But long story short, what do we have? We've got a nice path of insertion. I can see everything. Our central fissure is lined up with the screen. It's parallel to it. And I'm going to tell it OK. Now, what's next? Copy line. So let's see what it brings us. So here's what CEREC has done. These are the pre-treatment pictures. This is the pre-treatment model before we prepared this tooth. So if I rotate this model, what you'll see is a pretty good looking tooth number 14. Now, this line, this white line, is called the copy line. What that means is anything within the boundaries of this line, the software is going to copy. Anything outside the boundaries of this line, CEREC is going to fill in the blanks for us. So, if you have a single crown and you simply want to copy the occlusion, same thing, just like we do the margin, I can double click. If you just want to capture the occlusal table, then I, in theory, could make a mess. There we go. I, in theory, could just make my line right here and copy this. What that means is my proximal contacts are going to be formed by the software. No big deal, because we've got number 15 and we have number 13. So it's going to find my proximal contacts nicely. It means it's going to find my buccal contours by looking at the buccals of the adjacent teeth. It's going to find my palatal by looking at the palatal. So I could, in theory, just copy this. But what if we decided to biogeneric copy because this was an abutment for a partial? What if we had a mesial rest here? Well, that's within our copy line, no problem. But what if we had lingual reciprocation? Then I haven't copied that. So if I had lingual reciprocation, I wanted to copy more of this tooth, I would double click, and I might drag my line to cover a little more ground. Now, same thing. I probably have some retention. So I can double click, and I'm a single click. Every time I single click, I'm just making sure that line doesn't go anywhere. And I'm going to copy more tooth. I've got this little squiggle in here. Sometimes that happens when you're in interproximal, so I'm just going to clean it up and then double click. So that's nice and smooth, not so bad. So now I've copied more tooth. Now there's some really cool tricks you can do in CEREC to use this to our advantage. We'll go through that in a little more advanced session on copy. But that's the basic premise. Now I'm going to copy all of this data that is within that copy line, copying much more. But like I said, I could copy just the occlusal table if I wanted to. Once I have it all, I've drawn my margin. It's green, tells me I'm good. I've defined the axis. I've done my copy line. I'll hit next. At this point, the software is going to build our tooth number 14 based on the pre-treatment tooth, what we've told it to copy, and then it's going to fill in the blanks for us. And let's see how it does. It's positioning the tooth now to make sure we're within the confines. And there we go. It has built us a replica of tooth number 14. Now, if you want to change the anatomy, move cusps, move proximal contacts, change embrasures, we can do all that, and we'll hit all that when we deal with tools in another segment. But that is biogeneric copy in a nutshell. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.